Yo, what's up, guys? Joker bringing you another video, this time going over the patch notes for patch 0.1.1 for Path of Exile 2. I'm intending on keeping this as a relatively short video for a couple of reasons. I'm really tired, but I wanted to go ahead and get this video out before tomorrow. And the other thing is, this is relatively long. It's not much of a TLDR if I cover the entire thing, right? So patch 0.1.1 is intended to come out tomorrow, pending any last minute hurdles, right? So, like, in case anything happens with the deployment, they're just letting us know we are intending to have it out tomorrow, but chances are anything can happen and it can be delayed. But let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of things. The first thing is the end game changes. A bunch of this is stuff that was mentioned in the 7-minute video and the tavern talk, but some of it really wasn't really specified how it was going to work, right? So, recapping some of the things that we already know, the tower got revamped and we have 4 new towers. The avatar of the Arbiter of Ash boss fight now has 6 portals. The maps now actually contain checkpoints. So, just like the campaign, we can teleport between checkpoints in maps. Maps now contain a minimum of 3 rare monsters. I mean, I've never seen a map that has less than 3 rare monsters, but I mean, now we have more than three. Citadels now appear closer to the center of the atlas, is essentially what this says. Previously, the citadels, you had to be a certain distance away from the center of the atlas before they would actually render and generate. Now you can be closer to the center of the atlas than you had to be previously, right? So pretty much there's just going to be a lot more boss fragments coming into the economy is what I read this as, right? Because now you're not having to push as far away from the center as the atlas as you did previously. On top of that, it's going to be easier than ever to find citadels because they now have a beam that is going to be indicating where they are from the fog of war. They added a bossing tablet to go ahead and put in towers, and they made it so bosses appear now more likely every 1 in 4 maps, right? They went ahead and they reworked maps actually. They went ahead, I'm calling it a rework because it seems like a decent amount of changes. So, TLDR of what this means is they went ahead and they added gimmicks to the maps, right? Certain maps are going to have more essences, certain maps are going to have more strong boxes, certain maps are just going to have more magic and rare mobs, right? As you can see here, a number of maps is going to have more magic, some are going to have more rares, some are going to have more essence, some are going to have more strong box. So they essentially gave every map, like, well, I'm assuming every map, but probably a large majority of the maps their own gimmicks. I'm assuming the less advantageous maps, they went ahead and they buffed those more significantly, right? Things like your Myers, your Auguries, stuff like that, maps that people didn't want to run because of the shitty layout. They went ahead and most likely those are the ones that are going to have like the 50% more rare mobs and the 50% more essences type things. On top of that, you can now see on your atlas the biome that a map is in. So you can kind of pseudo target farm certain types of currencies, as well as maps that are only exclusively found in biomes containing citadels now have 50% more chance to contain essence, strong boxes, and shrines. So essentially, what this means is in my previous video, when I was showing how I was finding my citadels, how it was loading that entire chunk. All of those maps in that chunk are now just going to be super boosted with 50% more stuff, right? And I have a feeling that they are actually going to double dip with that as well, because I think they're going to be tagged like citadels as the biome for them. So not only is the map going to have the potential of having a lot of mobs in it, it's also going to get an additional bonus for being next to a citadel. That is how I read this at the very least. Another substantial buff is they quadrupled the amount of magic and rare monsters in Untainted Paradise. If you found the Untainted Paradise and you ran it, you were probably underwhelmed like I was. I found a few of them and they were never really super rewarding. So this is a really good buff because Untainted Paradise in PoE 1 is such a good map. It's so rewarding. You get so much EXP and it compensates for the fact that you don't get items. In PoE 2, it really didn't do much. Like the density was really bad, the amount of mobs was really bad. I would be able to run a map and only get like 1 or 2% EXP. It was kind of insane in my opinion. Other than that, there's not much that I cared about. I mean, even though I've already gone through pretty much the entire thing, they buffed the nodes in the Bossing Atlas passive tree, right? Giving you an additional benefit while specking into those. On top of it, they nerfed Breach. They buffed Delhi, giving you more simulacrum splinters, and they increased the zoom distance for your map. Previously, you kind of had a pseudo bug abuse to be able to actually zoom out far enough to like a substantial difference. You had to like click into a map and then like hit escape on your keyboard. It was a really weird thing to get like a decent zoom out distance. So they went ahead and just increased that. Skill changes, the only couple of things that are notable here is they killed any infinite loops, right? They killed the infinite loop with the cast on ignite, so that is literally dead. But they said they were going to do that. They said that they were going to kill builds that were killing the servers because it gave everyone else an overall worse experience. Because if you stop and think about it, if you have thousands of people lowering their frame rate, pretty much essentially almost crashing the servers with these infinite loop builds, it's going to impact everyone. It's not an anti-fun thing. It's a you're breaking the servers and ruining everyone else's experience. So GGG had to address it. Usually, what they said in the interview is when they do something like this, they usually increase like the base damage. So the next patch that we get is probably going to bring up the base damage of a lot of these skills. But as of right now, they had to cut it off. They had to stop people from bricking their servers, right? On top of that, the Choir of the Storm build that was like looping off of itself, same thing. Temporalis saw a small nerf, and people are upset about this. Now it can't go below 100 milliseconds, which is still zero point 0.1 seconds. So it's still going to be insanely strong, but it's not insanely broken and overpowered, right? That's pretty much all I cared about in the skill changes. I honestly didn't care about any of the monster changes. TLDR, it seems like they nerfed a bunch of the monsters, is what I was getting from it essentially at the very least. Pretty much either giving you the ability of like seeing their abilities better, right? Making sure that they can't off screen you, making their attacks more visible, stuff like that. In general changes and improvements, nothing really stuck out to me, right? A bunch of it is things that was in the 7-minute video. The only thing that caught my attention is the expedition buff. Where did it go? Right? Rarity of items in expedition has been increased. So essentially, they buffed expedition, making the items that you get out of it better, essentially. So expedition might actually be worth doing because what I take as increased the rarity is going to be the same thing with like the tiered modifiers, right? Like when you found a tier 5 item on the ground, that's what I assume they mean when they said increased the rarity. So expedition might be pretty good. That's the only thing that really stuck out in the general changes and improvements. I mean, the only other thing is burning ground can no longer spawn under levers. So if you ever got burning ground in Augury, right? When you were pulling the lever, you could potentially die to just burning ground. But so they once again pseudo helped with a burning ground. I mean, honestly, at this point, they should just take burning ground out of the game. Nobody likes it. But that's essentially all the changes I found here. Oh, I mean, there's one more thing. Somewhere in here, they increased the amount of mobs that you can actually push with your dodge roll. Yeah, right here. Anything that's like smaller than a skeleton, you can now dodge roll and like push through, right? So you shouldn't get surrounded as much and die like that. I believe that was the last thing that I saw noticeable in those general changes. So, in this 7-minute video and in the interview with Jonathan and Mark, they said that they were changing leveling uniques. It seems like they changed like literally everything. The only items that I was not able to find was like Headhunter, right? I didn't find Ingenuity. So, pretty much everything besides the end game chase uniques seems to have gotten some kind of change and or buff. So that's really cool there. They went ahead and they did buff essentially every unique. Now, is it the most substantial changes? No, but they are now usable, right? A lot of them seem like now they're at least something that you can use as a leveling unique. Some of the changes aren't huge, some of them are more noticeable. I really don't care about any of them. The only thing that I care about is the painter servant, right? So, like I was mentioning in my other video, it used to give me elemental res, but now it's going to give me elemental damage gained as like blink, right? Actually, now reading this, that's interesting phrasing, unless it's a typo. So it now instead provides 5 to 10% elemental damage gained as fire, cold, and lightning, as opposed to gained as extra. It's just saying gained as. So I'm assuming it is the gained as extra modifiers that we saw because I'm unfamiliar with this phrasing right here of just 10% of elemental damage gained as a cold damage. I feel like that is the as extra, right? Otherwise, this is a modifier that I'm just not familiar with. That's the only unique change that I cared about. And then they went ahead and they fixed a whole ton of stuff. Honestly, nothing really stood out to me. A lot of it was like quality of life, I guess. I didn't find anything noticeable, but I really only skimmed it. So there could be potentially bug fixes that I'm sorry, nerfs that they count as bug fixes. I'm not familiar with a lot of these things, so I just bypassed it, right? Controller improvements, once again, it's something that I don't really care about, so I skimmed it at best. TLDR seems to be just improvements on controller, right? Console improvements, console players can now use loot filters. You're going to want to go to Filter Blade and get this downloaded. You have the ability of syncing it to your POE profile, and that's going to be the easiest way for you to get it on console, right? Because then it would just be linked on your POE profile. Localization fixes, I don't care about, and microtransactions, I don't care about. There were also a handful of changes that they wanted to do that they weren't able to. Uh, Pretty much most important thing here, the map stash tab is the biggest thing that I honestly cared about. And then apart from that, they were saying working on the 6 portals for the other pinnacle bosses, right? Because they need to make sure that they do that right so it's not easily abusable or abusable at all. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with this and future content. And until next time, take care.